Hello, everyone. Welcome to Soul Whisperings vlog. I'm Monica Morrissey, and today I have a guest, and I am super excited about this conversation. This is Barney. Is that what I'm going to call you today?
Sure, yeah, sure.
When we did when we did the paperwork, his name was Josh on the paperwork, but this is Barney. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting. Yeah, and we do have, as we mentioned before we went live, before we hit the record button, we have a connection. The two of us have a connection, correct? That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You right now are sitting in the house that I grew up in Morrisville, Vermont.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a super fun to watch you and your family settle in to the house that I grew up in and to see your kids growing up there and having, so much fun there. I just love watching that.
Running around. Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the things we got questions for you too, because we got to figure out, sometimes there's wires that go around some places. We thought sure yeah, did your dad had like an intercom system at one point, didn't he? Is that what he had? Okay.
He
Yeah.
did. Been always doing his own projects. He was always doing something, and he always had some idea. The auto mechanic trying to be a carpenter was always an interesting thing to grow up with. And your house, originally started as just a little bit, right? Just the kitchen and that one room.
Right.
And every time he had a kid, he built on.
He just kept getting big. Yeah, and that's why it's so fun. Is like I remember when we first moved here back in 2016, we moved here. And basically the footprint of the house is basically the same as the basement.
Mhm.
So every time your dad added an extension to the house, he actually also added a basement to the house as well. So I remember coming in here, it's like it was the house. I mean, you know this is like it's like a labyrinth. Like when I first did the house tour back in 2015, we're like, you need to come downstairs here, and we turn a corner and there's another room, and then you turn another corner, there's another room. Like it's just I just showed my daughter too that the secret passageway that's actually in that. She's like, "We got a secret passageway." I'm like, well, technically it's a secret passageway. There is where I'm in now is I had to turn it into my man cave, and this is where this is where your dad had his wood. Like he stacked wood because he had a wood furnace. So here there's a wood chute here. So technically, I told my girls like there's actually a secret passageway. It's here. So, but nobody uses it because but yeah, so I had to put a picture up over it. So I have like a superhero poster hanging up over it. But yeah, if in an emergency, you can take off the poster and crawl right up through the wood chute and escape through the side. But yeah, it's fun. It's been an amazing journey, like, knowing you, and we've known each other now for a very long time, and just sharing stories about what we've done as we've you know redesigned some of the rooms and got it fixed up for the fact that we have now like six people because my mother-in-law lives here too. So it's a lot of space, and we're utilizing it to its full extent.
Well, there's something, we talk about in grief, like losing something, right? Like, but, I lost my father, but I also, selling the house, you
Mm,
want it to go to somebody who's going to appreciate it.
right.
And just see you and your family there and your wife, especially just loving that house, just like my dad did. And it brings me joy
Yeah.
to watch that. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know it would make my dad so happy. And I know that I think you said it at the closing. You're like, yeah, every time I tell somebody that I'm buying this house in Morrisville and I try to tell them like where it is, and they
Yeah.
just say, oh, it's Jim Palmer's house. And
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
like, it's always going to be Jim Palmer's house. Just he was just there for so long. So
And that's what I always tell people is like, yeah, I'm at Jim Palmer's old place. They're like, oh yeah, yeah, down there, yeah.
I love it. Small town. Well, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about you and all the great work that you're doing, having fun. So, that you're part of Storycomic. The
Mhm.
genesis of Storycomic dates back to its humble origins as a platform to showcase your own work. Yet, as the tapestry of connections with fellow artists and authors grew, it became evident that a treasure trove of brilliance existed, waiting to be shared alongside valuable insights. So, before I continue on, tell me about Storycomic a little bit, and then I'm going to continue on.
So yeah, I've been so long story short, I'll give you the abbreviated version, Monica. I graduated from art school back in 1998. And if anybody remembers 1998, it's that was like the time when you had the internet. It's like you had your internet bubble that was around there. So everybody created a website and everybody did all kinds of stuff. And it was around that time when I did what anybody would do when you graduate with an art degree in 1998. I mean, it's obvious. You join the Peace Corps. There's nothing else to do. You can't do anything else. So I went. I joined the Peace Corps. I was in the Peace Corps for a few years, and so I was able to also take my artwork and I was doing cartooning and comic books and stuff like that. So I was able to do that while I was in the Peace Corps. Came out of the Peace Corps, and they're still not, and came out of the Peace Corps in 2004. So there's still not a lot to do with an art degree, and also spending about 4 years or so, living overseas in a mud hut. So I decided to keep doing international relief work. So I did international relief work. So I was doing that for about 10 years or so, working for places like Doctors Without Borders and stuff like that, and having a great time. And at that point, I also then ended up meeting my wife overseas. My wife is Nigerian, and and I was smart enough to know. I mean, it's the standard story everybody's heard a million times about, the Vermont cartoonist that marries a Nigerian runway model. Everybody's heard the story. I mean, it's like, I mean, that's a generic love story that always happens. And so basically at that point, I decided to, you know what, I've been living out of a suitcase for long enough. It's time for me to, go back home. So I kind of drew a circle around my hometown of Groton, Vermont, and applied to any jobs that I could get that kind of, reflected that my skill set of working in international relief for about, over a decade at that point. Long story short, I worked in the I when I was working in the nonprofit field for a lot of years, and at that point, I wanted to get back into cartooning. I wanted to get back in art, so I joined this group that's called the Vermont Comic Creators. It's a loose knit group of folks that we meet twice a week, usually over Zoom or someplace, and we chat and talk and stuff like that. And it was that point where I was, at this point I had my website where I was like promoting my artwork and promoting my books. I have about 10 published books so far, and one of them was, and I was having conversations with these folks. I'm like, this is good stuff. I should be recording this. And that was back in 2019 when I started doing that. And fast forward, it's been now, I've had a fairly successful podcast. I've had about almost 30,000 downloads of it, and done 330 episodes of a podcast where I interview artists and storytellers. And I focus a lot now as I get older. I focus a lot on Vermont authors, and I focus a lot on children's book authors and artists as well. And the and it's and that's kind of where the impetus of the website Storycomic came about, that it's initially was used as a platform to kind of support my own art and really use that as that. But I really love talking to people. I really love meeting new people. I've met a lot of great folks over the years of doing it, and been able to, I've had the benefit of being the fortune and grateful for being able to um, interview people from all over the world, and it's been a blast. And it's one of those things where it's made me uh, it made me a more curious person as well. And I just realized with the idea of living overseas for so many years, that everybody has a story to tell. And one of those things too is that everybody is actually, and I love, been some great quotes and some great work ethics I've learned from interviewing people. One of my favorite one is that everybody's born an artist until somebody tells them they're not. So yeah.
So, thank you. That is a wonderful story. I love the playful twist that your graphic novels. It says unfold real world adventures with a playful twist, fostering a deep connection between the readers and the universal themes I explore. The narratives paint a vibrant canvas where the poignant nuances of intercultural marriage intertwine with the enlightening escapades of international relief work. And you also have two books called Dad Jokes. But let's go back to these intercultural marriages are part of your graphic novels. And
Right.
I just love the characters in there. Like, can you like share a little bit about that? And
I
also,
was
I'm
looking for,
curious, I've never actually, I guess I didn't notice. Are you doing all the drawings too, and the writing?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us about those.
So it was what I love. So what one of the things that I do is I love working in satire and working in allegories and also like that stuff. So for instance, with my work I did, my Peace Corps satire book, I have it take place on Mars to kind of give people the understanding of like being in a completely different culture. For those that might not understand it, putting it in more and what was the other thing too is that um putting I created this called Lion and Dove, which is basically a satire. It almost feels like a 90s sitcom because it's all about these little snippets of stories of some of the goofy things that I've done with, with Edith, my wife, over the years. And they're set up in a comic book format, but they kind of read like almost like a 90s sitcom. Like one example is like issue number one was when she first got here, she wanted one particular brand of cereal. And of course, me, who is Vermonters are stereotypically known as being frugal. I'm like, I'm not buying the brand name cereal. I'm gonna buy the store-bought cereal. Like it tastes exactly the same. I'm gonna spend an extra $3
Yeah.
on cardboard box. I'm not gonna do that. And so that was a whole fiasco where I ended up coming back buying the brand name. I mean, buying the generic brand. And it was not a good evening that night. But of course, it's like it was one of those situations where it was, and it's those situations teaching my wife, because my wife is from Lagos, which is a city. So she's never left the city. So a lot of
Mhm.
people are, because I remember when people say, "Oh, you married a woman from Africa. You must be the culture must be so different." I'm like, well, no, well, not what you expect. It's her being from the city moving to the country is the
Mhm.
culture shock. So, and that's the wonderful thing about Mooresville, of where we live now, is because I'm being from Vermont. I like being able to walk outside and just like take a walk in the woods, but it has to be urban enough where you can actually have pizza delivered. So we had to make sure that we lived in a town that was small enough where it can walk in the woods, but big enough where you can still have pizza delivery. So that's why Morrisville was the what was a good medium point for us. But yeah, and that's where Lion and Dove, for those that check it out. And yeah, going to storycomic.com. I mean, all these comics that we're talking about are available there, and they're available also on uh uh, they're also available on, I guess, through Amazon too. You can get all these as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So just knowing your wife and you a little bit, like the sense of humor just shines through, and it makes me giggle because like I can see that serial story unfolding
Yeah.
in real life, right? Like in the story, like if I'm reading it, right? Like I'm just like giggling to myself because I know that you both, enjoy life so much. Your energy and your charisma and everything about you, and then you are able to come to that point of laughter, right? And love, and that that like this is just a little bump in the road and we'll get through it and we'll laugh about this later, but that just shines through in these stories.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um, so you talk about the importance of following your heart and finding time to do what you love. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, you know what? I really believe like it's just like there's two organs that kind of like that you can follow. You can either follow your brain, or you can follow your heart. Um, your brain's great at problem solving, but usually kind of going with your gut on certain things. I know some of the best decisions I ever made were ones I just made without thinking on it, like just going for it. Marrying my wife, for instance, we only dated for a month before we got, and we watched this 90-day fiance stuff. We've been married for 11 years now, but I knew that if we dated any longer than a month, she'd figure out how much of a goofball I was, and there's no way that she would have married me. So I did it, and going into the Peace Corps, moving here, like all this stuff was all based off of you can get your I truly believe that you can get yourself in more trouble the more you analyze a problem than if it's almost like in your guts telling you to do something, you're trying to convince yourself not to do it for either out of a fear of success or out of a fear of failure. But either way, you 9 times out of 10 I've seen in my experience is that when you make a decision on something and something feels right, then it probably is right. And no matter how scared you are doing it, just go for it. My latest venture, I bought a radio station. I'm a radio station owner now, and I've owned a radio station since October. And the decision to buy it happened last March, but it took a while to do all that stuff. But that was one of those things where it's almost like it's there's some guiding hands. It's kind of like pushing you in a direction, and it's almost like being open to feeling that and just being confident and kind of being trusting of that direction and being able to head in that direction. There's I mean there's times when there's times when it's really important to use logic and to kind of use sense on some of that stuff, and that's when it comes down to, I believe, like some of that problem solving issues. But when I'm making like decision making is different than problem solving than I've always felt. And there are times when using your brain is incredibly important. And then there's times when, going with your gut is paramount to that as well. So, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I named my business Intuitive Wellness because I want people to intuitively know who they are, what
Right.
lights them up, and to trust that. And it sounds like you trusted that. So tell us a little bit for the Vermont listeners. What's the radio station and how do they tune in and all that stuff?
Yeah, so it's WYKR, and most people from Vermont and New Hampshire can hear it if you live in either St. Johnsbury all the way down to, say, Hanover area. You can hear it up as far as, say, close to Barry, Vermont, and further out towards Littleton, New Hampshire. But yeah, it's also on WYKR.com. It's actually streaming. So you can actually say, Alexa, play WYKR, and she'll play it. So, oh, I'm sorry. I have a Alexa right here.
And so what's the number? What would be the
Alexa, hang on, Alexa, stop. Sorry.
that is
Yeah, 101.3.
okay.
But you'll get that in there if you actually physically are in that St. Johnsbury, Hanover air that down that down that Connecticut River Valley area is when you're going to get it. So yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
How
Oh,
has that
sorry.
been for you?
It's what it's so fun. Like it's like so basically, Alexa, stop. Sorry. um, it's really fun because I've been able to take the three things that I've done with my life where the working in international relief. I worked in medical logistics, so I did all of the logistics stuff. So I was in charge of like generators and radio towers and HF radio and all this kind of stuff. So I'm able to tap into my engineering background and do that. I'm able to tap into the work I've done in podcasting and art, because it's broadcasting is a form of entertainment. So there's the entertainment value that I'm doing. And the third thing is like I spent 10 plus years as an executive director for a local nonprofit. So the idea of knowing how to run a business from that side, I've been able to utilize that experience as well. So this is kind of like the accumulation of basically the three things that I've done into this one ball, basically, of all the things that I've been good at, that I've been proud of, I've been grateful of knowing and putting it together into basically I'm 47 now, so being able to take my final career move, and this is what I love, is that I've been able to do something new basically every 15 or so years. I do something new, so yeah, it's fun.
It's so interesting to, sometimes it's in the looking back. Like, I hear what you're saying about following your heart and finding time to do what you love. And sometimes we don't even realize it's those steps that we took, right? I always
Right,
envision a staircase, right? And then there's a landing, and then there's a turn, and then there's another staircase, right? Like, but it feels like every step that you took where you followed something that you thought was right,
right,
that immediate kind of thought, like, oh, I think this feels good. And you did it. And then you felt a shift in your energy and you did something else. And now looking back, you can say, oh, this led me to
right.
this. But you didn't even see that coming. You didn't even see the top of the staircase. You didn't know, right? 20 years ago that you wanted to buy a radio station.
Right. No, I mean, this is all led to being able to be on Monica's vlog. This was the whole goal.
Oh, you're funny. Oh, so you said in your notes that you sent to me that sometimes folks struggle to get started doing something and always hope for a push to get started.
Right,
So, what would you tell to somebody who maybe feels stuck in the mud? Like, I just keep getting, and you get those boots stuck in the mud, and like, I can't move forward. And maybe it's because something that happened to them, or they're scared. And you touched a little bit about this. Maybe your
right,
fear of success,
right.
directing that, or are you fearful of something? What kind of guides you in being able to, go buy a radio station? Who does that?
No, I mean, basically, it's like continuing forward motion, but not to the point of burnout, which is really important. I want to highlight the fact that, a caveat to that is that, um, in 20 years, the only people that notice that you worked late are your kids. So it's really important to make sure it's always, when I was, even working in the nonprofit field, I always say that, it's family first, work second. So it's always based off of the fact of making sure that, you're creating memories and you're spending time with your family, because that's paramount to anything that comes forward. But what is people that it's when people say, oh, I got this book that I want to write, or I got this thing that I want to do. I want to do like whatever that thing that drives you, but you keep putting it off. And I want to highlight too, it's actually harder nowadays than it is. It's harder nowadays to concentrate on stuff than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And there's a scientific reason behind that. The reason behind it is because of the internet. Because what happens is people now have a a much shorter attention span. So it's hard for them to sit down and concentrate and do some things. But Monica, there's good news. I just read an article about this. How to fix to make sure that you can actually concentrate more on things, is all you have to do, and this is great for an author to hear this, read for 30 minutes a day. And that will kind of help reset, because not not listening to an audiobook, the actual art of sitting down and reading a book for 30 minutes a day is going to square away and actually increase your attention span to do more things. And I give people, I have got some really good tips for people, for those that were thinking about wanting to write a book.
Mm,
Step number one, don't think about the finished product. Just
mm,
sit down and start writing it. Just start writing it. And I guarantee you, and this is the promise I'm going to give your listeners and viewers out there, I guarantee your first draft is going to be utter and complete poop. It always is. Like, this never going to be like, it doesn't matter. That's how you start. Like, it's when you build a foundation, you're using dirt and mud to build a foundation. That is what you start with. And then from there, you will have friends and allies who are able to like help you tweak it and edit it, and join a book club, join writing clubs. There's writing clubs in your town. There's writing clubs everywhere. And if you're writing children's books, you're writing nonfiction, you're writing mysteries, there are already Facebook groups out there who are who are eager to help you. So just start. And there's a couple points too, is that I remember, and this one person who has ADHD wicked bad, and she said she found a tweak for her brain. So try this. If you get distracted really easy, this is what she does, and it works for her all the time. She sets a timer for a prime number. And that way, for some reason, it actually resets her brain. She's not thinking about, because if you set a timer for 10 minutes, you're like, okay, so 10 minutes is like, so that means like half the time is gonna be 5 minutes. So you start thinking about how to split it up. If you set a timer for 37 minutes, or 17 minutes, or 23 minutes, for some reason, everybody I've talked to who've tried this, they've actually been able to concentrate really well on setting a timer and just start writing. Close your windows, don't watch anything, but just sit down and start writing and stuff like that. Or any project that you're working on that you want to start doing that, whether you're a woodworker or anything that you're working on, or set a time. If you get distracted easily, just set a timer for a prime number and go from there. So that that was the advice that I got, and I've been using that, and it's been it's like a magic pill. It's been so fun just to watch how that works. Yeah.
that's awesome. It brings me back to my first book, my first draft. It's very ugly. And it doesn't look anything like it, but the flow of it, right? Because I just kept dumping it all out.
Yeah.
And then I pictured it like clay, like molding clay,
Yeah.
right? And I like your analogy of the foundation. And it's funny because it brings me full circle back to you said that my dad always added the basement,
Hmm.
every part. Of course, he had to
Yeah.
have a solid foundation.
Yeah.
And so, like, I always look at the, foundation in analogies, like, that you've got your foundation and then you can just go up from there, right?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. This has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you so much for your wisdom, sharing your soul journey, with us, and all of those advice and tips. I love it. Um, I always love to end with, what do you absolutely love about life?
I think, it's, as a dad, and my kids are 3, 7, and 9. I love watching them discover things.
Mm,
Like, it just it just makes you realize that, life, truly is, in that sense, infinite, in the sense, like, watching life get renewed and ideas get renewed, and just seeing, um just, watching it. So I'm looking at it through like through a dad's eyes, just watching. And that's what I love about life, is um seeing my parents, be with their grandkids, and just knowing that there's a chain that kind of goes through, and we're all just a part of it,
mm.
and that's something that makes me really love it. I think that's what really makes me love life. Um and just watching them create stories, it's just knowing that there's so much out there, and that's what makes me love life. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And you have two girls and a boy, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that is super fun.
Yeah.
I can really appreciate that and relate, especially being
Yeah.
a grandma now and just slowing down and just, the snow and like it just everything is a miracle, right? Like just
Yeah.
embracing that journey.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and maybe we'll have you again. We didn't really highlight your dad joke books.
I
Maybe
know.
we can
See?
talk about that next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so find Barney at storycomic.com. The links will be in the show notes. And again, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me.